Welcome to the fourth episode of Introduction to Ruby. Today I'm going to cover some data types and Ruby's output methods. So, in this episode we're going to explore some of Ruby's data types, namely strings and numbers, and we're going to learn how to print out information to the shell using Ruby's built-in methods. So let's start with the data types. Now, data types let us categorize data into different types that place constraints on the values and the operations that can be performed on those values. So in a nutshell, they allow us to work with our data in a structured manner that's really useful. And of course, they actually represent our data in Ruby code. And one of those data types is the string. Strings represent what we commonly call text. Strings are objects, just like everything else in Ruby, and you can create such a string object to represent your text by surrounding it, the text that you'd like the string object to represent, with single or double quotes, like so. So here you can see that, hello, this is a text surrounded by double quotes, and hello, this is another text surrounded by single ones. Now, there is actually a difference between the two, but we're going to get into that later on. The second group of data types, in addition to the string, which is actually not a group but a data type itself, but the next group I'd like to look at are numbers. And generally, there are two types of numbers, leaving out complex numbers. There are integers, like 2, 10, 205, and minus 3, and there are floating point numbers, which are also known as floats, and 3.1415 is an example of a float. And Ruby uses different data types for different types of numbers, so it differentiates between integers and floating point numbers. And to make this a bit clearer, I've actually prepared a little diagram of Ruby's numeric types. So before I start with the actual diagram, there's one more thing that I need to explain, and that is that types are actually classes. So if an object, and again I'm going to get to that a bit later in a bit more detail, but you just need to get this to understand the diagram properly. What I'm trying to say is that if I have, let's say, a number, and it's of type number, let's assume there's a type number, then it's actually an instance of class number. Or if it's a float, it's actually an instance of class float. And as you can see in the diagram, there's one class numeric, and all number-related classes are actually subclasses of that class numeric. So there's integer and there's float, which are both subclasses of numeric, and Ruby actually knows two types of integers, fixed nums and big nums. Now fixed nums are for smaller numbers, while big nums are for really huge, massive numbers, like trillions and trillions and stuff like that, and Ruby will automatically decide which one to use and convert your numbers appropriately. And now I'm just going to repeat what I said earlier about types actually being classes, because a certain object is said to be of a certain type if it's an instance of the class that represents that type. So let's look at an example. Let's look at 3. 3 is an object. It's an instance of class fixed num, which represents small numbers, like I showed you in the diagram, and it is thus said to be of type fixed num. Okay, that's it for data types in this episode. Just to recap, we've looked at strings and numbers, and we found out that data types are actually classes, and that Ruby knows different types of numbers which are represented by different classes, but all of those classes inherit from class numeric, or subclasses of numeric. Now let's move on to the second part of this episode, which is about printing out information to the shell. And before we actually get started with that, I'd like to show you what I mean by shell output. If you look at this little screenshot, or other portion of the screenshot that I created, you can see that I used the Ruby interpreter to run a file called test.rb, a Ruby script named test.rb. And that Ruby script just printed out some text to my shell. And I've actually marked that text with that arrow here. This is output. That's the text that the Ruby script actually printed out. And to print out such a text in Ruby script, there are two methods that we can use. There's puts and then there's print. And they're both methods used to print out information to the shell, but of course there is a difference between them. And the difference is that puts inserts a line break after the output, while print doesn't. And I'm going to show you what exactly that means in practice in the practical part of this episode. And what's so special about puts and prints and some other methods, but for now it's just puts and print, is that they're both accessible without specifying an object they belong to. And again, I'm going to demonstrate that in the practical part of this episode. So, but before we actually do that, let's take a look at the syntax of print and puts. This is how you use it. In the first line here, you can see that I'm just printing out the number 3 to the screen. Just type 3 space print space 3. And the same goes for puts, where I'm actually, for the puts line here, where I'm actually printing out a string. You could put the 3 and the hello world in parentheses. You don't have to do that though. That's optional. And what you should also note here is that print and puts work with most data types, which is really, really useful. Okay, that concludes the theoretical demonstration, the theoretical presentation for this episode. I'm now going to switch over to my desktop in a second, and then I'm going to demonstrate some of the concepts that I covered in this episode in practice. So what follows is a quick demo. Okay, I'm back for the practical part of this episode. So I'm going to launch up my terminal. If you need a quick refresher on how to get to your system's command line, please watch the part of episode 3 that deals with getting to the command line on OS 10 at Vista again, and come back here later. But if you manage to open it fine, then we're just going to get on. Okay, I'm back to my desktop for the practical part of this episode. So I'm going to launch up my terminal, and if you need a quick refresher on how to get to your system's command line, please refer back to video 3. Now I'm going to launch up IRB, just to have a little play with Ruby. Just going to increase the font size here. Okay. And I'm going to start with strings. So here's a string, just some text surrounded by double or single quotes. In my case it's double quotes. I can also do it with single ones. There's no difference in the evaluation. The value of a string is the string itself. Now we can also ask a string object which class it is an instance of, and of course we know because of the double quotes here that this is a string object, but we can ask any object which class it is an instance of, and you do that by calling the class method, which brings me to explaining how to call a method on an object. It's easy. You just write up the object, like hello world is an object, you have just the object here, then a dot, which is the dot operator, which is used for recording methods, and then you just type out the name of the method, and if you want to, you can add some parentheses to the end of the method name. So I'm going to ask it, okay, it's a string. I can do the same for the single quoted one, just to show you that there's no difference. Single quote that this time. Okay, it's a string. Okay, now on to numbers. Let's start with a simple number like 3. Just the value of a number is the number itself, just as with strings. And I'm now going to call the class method on this again. You can see this is a fixed number. And as if I had a really big number, let's see if we can create a number big enough for this to become a big number. Yeah, here we go. This is a big number. I can also do it with floats. Call the class method on it. Class float, and if the many dots are confusing you here, you can also write it like this, which does the same. Okay, next I'd like to show you something rather interesting. If I type up the number 8 and I want to add 2 to it, I can just write it like that, 8 plus 2. I can also remove the white space here, and it works. Now you might be wondering, well, this doesn't look very object-oriented to me. And it doesn't, but what goes on behind the scenes is this. We've got the number 8, and we're calling a method on it. We're calling the plus method on it, and we're giving the plus method one argument. Arguments are it's just data that you can pass to methods that they can then use. So we're passing the plus method of the object 8, the value 2 as an argument, and that actually produces our correct result. And the same is true for floats. Of course, I can also do it with a float, 8.2. And the same is also true for multiplication, subtraction, adding stuff together, division, and yeah, that's basically it. So actually Ruby is extremely object-oriented, but sometimes it's kind of hiding that from you. That's a good thing. I mean, I prefer writing 8 plus 2 over writing 8 dot plus open parenthesis 2 closing parenthesis. So this is really just a convenient shortcut up here for this. Okay, I think that's it for the practical demonstration of this episode. I hope you liked it. I'd like to encourage you here to leave me a comment on the video page for this episode, because I really appreciate your feedback. And if you just like this episode, thought it was wonderful, just leave me a quick comment saying so, or leave me a vote, or maybe even do both. If you didn't like the episode, please let me know. And if you liked it but you'd just like to give some constructive feedback, also feel free to do that. So I really appreciate feedback of any sort on the Show Me Do video page in the form of comments and or votes. So please leave some feedback. I'd really appreciate it. In the next episode, we're going to look at some more Ruby code. I'm Luke Solent, and that's it for this episode. Till next time.